I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. You know, one of the most important things that we do on the MeidasTouch Network is try to debunk all of the disinformation out there and to bring the most accurate and specific data we can to all of you. And one of the most horrific disinfo campaigns out there that I see time and time again is whenever there is a disaster, I see certain people with certain interests that are adverse, I believe, to the national interests of our country start spreading these lies and saying things to confuse and manipulate. And that was no different than what I saw recently with these horrific wildfires in Hawaii. So many people lost their lives, so many businesses lost, so many people injured, so many people displaced. And I saw all these lies being spread about what's President Biden doing and President Biden's not doing this. And I was just like, enough. And I wanted to get answers. I wanted to go to the source. So we got someone who absolutely knows what is going on. And I wanted the specifics. I wanted the details. So we're bringing on as a guest Caitlin Durkovich, who is the deputy assistant to the president, to President Biden, and Deputy Homeland Security Advisor for Resilience and Response at the White House National Security Council. And I want to ask Caitlin Durkovich, provide some specifics. Let's focus on what is going on, and I want to share that with you. And I know maybe this doesn't fit into a neat soundbite, and maybe that's why legacy media doesn't cover it, or legacy media just wants the drama. But I know that people who watch the MeidasTouch Network want the facts, want the data, and want the specifics. So that's what we are going to show you right now. We're going to go to that interview. And one thing I want to mention that's very important is that we encourage Maui residents affected by the wildfires to register for disaster assistance. People with limited phone and internet access can register with FEMA staff in person at shelters. Others can register online at www.disasterassistance.gov. by calling 1-800-621-3362 or by using the FEMA app. So without further ado, let's bring in that interview right now. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. We are joined by Caitlin Durkovich, who is the Deputy Assistant to President Biden and Deputy Homeland Security Advisor for Resilience and Response at the White House National Security Council. Welcome to the show.
Ben, thank you very much. Thank you for having me today.
So it was announced earlier today that President Biden will be heading to Maui. A lot of things are being done there. The horrific wildfires, a true calamity. But I want to get out there. What efforts are being done? This is within your purview. Can you let the people out there know the specifics, though? That's what people want to know. What are the specifics that are getting done? And I thought we should drill down on that today.
Ben, great question and happy to address that. But yes, the president intends to travel to Maui on Monday, August 21st. We want to make sure that as we have considered this, that it is, we are not getting in the way. He's not getting in the way of first responders in the efforts that are ongoing to begin to help the island respond following these devastating wildfires. To your immediate question, this has really been a whole of government response, local, state, and federal. Governor Green last week on Thursday morning requested an expedited major disaster declaration. The president approved that request within hours of receiving it, and it opened up the response that we have been helping the state with. We have the good fortune that our regional administrator that serves, the FEMA regional administrator that serves the Hawaii region, actually happened to be on island or in the state when the fires broke out, Bob Fenton. And he is just a terrific human being, a true public servant. has helped both with the MPOX response, but also Operation Allies Welcome, and knows the response system back and forth. And so even before the expedited major disaster declaration was signed, Bob was beginning to surge commodities to the shelters that had opened on Maui to put displaced survivors in them. That's food and water, cots and blankets. I think, to date, we're over 50,000 meals have been supplied, tens of thousands of liters of water, thousands of cots and blankets, again, have gone to these shelters. I do want to thank the American Red Cross and other voluntary organizations who are terrific partners as we think about sheltering displaced survivors. We couldn't do it without them. The Department of Transportation worked very closely with the commercial carriers. We had to get almost 40,000 people back to mainland and other destinations. And so the Department of Transportation helped orchestrate that effort. As you know, Hawaii is not accustomed to wildfires, and this is really a result of conditions that have been created by our climate crisis. They don't have the same firefighting capacity that states like California, Washington, Oregon do, because they're not used to these fires. So the United States Forest Service has sent personnel to the island to help the state with fire suppression and strategies to prevent other fire ignitions, but also to help with what we call fire mop-up or cleanup. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, they're terrific. We couldn't do disaster response without the Army Corps. They do a couple of different things. One is that they help what we call get lifelines restored. As you know, power has been knocked out, or was knocked out to tens of thousands of residents. The Army Corps has been instrumental in getting power restored, in particular to the western part of the island. They have the painstaking task now of working with the state and also the Environmental Protection Agency to develop a debris removal strategy. This is actually, we can't start doing debris removal until the fires are fully suppressed and we have identified all of the remains in the rubble, and I'm going to come back to that later, but they're developing a strategy for how we're going to get the debris off island. This is a challenge. It was a challenge in Puerto Rico, but when you deal with disasters in island communities, the moving stuff on and off the island is something that we have to work through. And again, this is where the Army Corps is really terrific. I talked a little bit about the remains. There are 47 canine teams with specialized kind of cadaver sensing capabilities that are on island or will be on island in the next 24 hours. This is a dog and a trained specialist. They're remarkable human beings. They come from all parts of the country and are specially trained in doing this. We are also mobilizing. DOD has a POW MIA team that goes around the world to recover remains, to identify them. We've actually deployed 6 anthropologists, specialized equipment, and personnel that are part of this unique DOD capability to Maui to help with the recovery and identification of remains. Let's just talk about FEMA. The Federal Emergency Management Agency is the lead federal agency for all incident management response in our country. They coordinate the entire federal effort. They've got 300 people on island. There are over 500 federal personnel on Maui, but 300 of them are FEMA. They do incident management. They help with search and rescue. They help with the delivery of those commodities and are continually assessing the communities and the state's needs and making those requests of the federal family. As part of that expedited major disaster declaration that I talked about, we turned on something called individual assistance, which gets direct federal assistance to individuals who have lost their homes or their homes have been damaged. Over 4,000 Native Hawaiians have applied for that. We've gotten 2 million out the door already. And then in addition, we turned on something called Critical Needs Assessment, which is $700 that goes directly to impacted survivors in cash that allows them to buy prescriptions, food, toiletries, things that they may have lost in the island. And then the Small Business Administration has a very low interest disaster loan program. So again, for survivors that either lost their businesses or their homes, they can apply for these low interest disaster loans if they're underinsured or not insured to help with the rebuilding process. So that is, let me just say one other thing too, the Veterans Administration is, as you are likely aware, Hawaii is home to a number of military installations and a lot of veterans retire there. So they have opened their centers to veterans and to active military personnel. If they need a place to shelter, they're making all sorts of resources available to active duty personnel and veterans that are on the island. So that is, I wouldn't say a brief, but a summary of some of what we are doing on the island.
And that's the summary that people need to hear. People need to hear specifics. What you just described is government functioning and government with extensive coordination between different departments, coordination with local and state officials, and not just providing superlatives, but providing specifics. And what I've seen time and time again with various disasters, and sadly, disasters are going to happen in all presidential administrations. And to me, what defines a presidential administration is how do they respond to the disaster? How do they make government actually work and do something? And unfortunately, what I see a lot, especially of late, sadly, is a lot of disinformation that is put out there to try to, I believe, you don't have to say, maliciously interfere with plans that are very specific, trying to solve problems that are being implemented. What I want to hear from you too, though, is can you describe, based on your position, though, kind of the overall approach, the philosophy? How does the Biden administration deal with disaster relief? And can you kind of move the curtain a little bit and let us all in to see, like, what is it like? What is a day in the life like? And the overall governing philosophy of how you respond to disasters?
That's a great question and something I'm really very proud of and happy to answer. I will tell you that no day is the same here. But the president made it very clear since the first day of his administration that we will lean in and come to Americans in their greatest time of need, regardless of the color of state that they live in. And we very much abide by that rule here at the White House and across what we call the federal interagency or the federal family that is responsible for delivering federal response and recovery resources and assistance to these communities. The president is committed to showing Americans that the federal government is working on their behalf, again, in their greatest time of need. And so there's a process by which when a governor, the disaster has exceeded the state's capacity, that he can ask for federal support. But I will tell you, we live by the mantra that we let the paperwork catch up, and that FEMA is looking at the disaster, what the impacts are going to be, moving to get personnel activated and deployed, those specialized resources that we bring, search and rescue teams, for example, the commodities that we can provide, even before that disaster declaration is signed, all of that stuff is in motion. My team here is responsible for taking the recommendation. So the governor will submit a request to FEMA for the disaster declaration. FEMA makes a recommendation to the president. We are responsible for getting the various approvals here at the White House before it goes to the president for decision. We often get these requests at 10 or 11 at night. And we will stay up all night. I've made a few enemies along the way, sometimes waking people up to sign off on it so we can get that declaration approved by the president and that aid flowing to the state and to the individuals. And so the president has approved disaster declaration when he's been overseas, when he's been in different time zones. We've had to wake governors up at the wee hours of the morning before we can publicly announce that we've approved it. We actually like to tell the governor that we've done it. And so we have to track down the governor to wake him or her up. But it is a process that we are committed to doing with speed. I have a great team who is responsible for making sure that this happens. And then that officially kind of anoints FEMA as the lead federal agency and puts the whole incident management framework and doctrine into place. FEMA, again, is working with the governor and the state emergency manager to understand where they have gaps, what those needs are. And then they do what they call mission assigned. So if they need search and rescue teams, if they need specialized human remain recovery, they will mission assign the Department of Defense. They may mission assign the Army Corps, the U.S. Coast Guard to help with these things. And they're continually doing that assessment. That's what some of those FEMA people on the ground do. So that's a kind of a sense of what happens.
And what always has bugged me, why I created my own media network, is frankly, I got tired of watching cable news just wanting like a fun sounding soundbite or something and not drilling down into issues. And I was like, do people really want to see just like the both sides crap, or do they really want to know details? And what I found is everything that you're talking about is precisely what people want to hear, because they want to learn what the government is doing, and they're not learning about it from cable news or any other place. And so finally, before we go, is there any kind of misconception or kind of disinformation that floats out there that you've always said, you know what, I just wish the media for one moment would cover this and let people know that this is what's going on? I want to give you that opportunity to do that here.
That's a great question. And I would say a couple of things. And we've seen some narratives around Hawaii and how quickly we may or may not have responded. Every disaster is different. The situations on the ground are complex, and we have to respect the impacts. And so Hawaii is a great example, right? The fires are not fully suppressed. We have hundreds of people who are missing and animals who are missing, whose remains may be in the debris. And so there are a couple of priorities. One is that we have to assure the safety of the first responders and the personnel who are responsible for that initial response and recovery. We don't want to unnecessarily put them in harm's way. So we have to think about how we flow resources and response assistance into the state, and aren't doing it in a way that may impact other consequences, other things that we are dealing with. I wish that we were able to lift up and shine more of a spotlight on the first responders. These are the people, as the president says, that run into the disaster, that run into the fire when others are running away. They are remarkable human beings. They put their lives at risk every day. The emotional toll that they have to deal with, and searching for survivors and ultimately remains. And I mean, I've had the privilege of traveling with the president to some of these disaster sites, and it is, I can't tell you, TV doesn't do justice. And when you go, I'll give an example, to Western Kentucky after a long track tornado has literally destroyed these towns. And you go into neighborhoods and you see families sitting on the stoop and there's no house behind them. And it's house after house. Well, our first responders deal with this, and it's hard. It's emotionally just draining, and it breaks your heart. And yet our first responders do this disaster after disaster. And they're remarkable people. And I think that we need to continue to acknowledge how important they are to all of this. We are, again, 100% committed to making sure that we are helping survivors in their greatest time of need. It is a whole of government effort. We are focused on it here at the White House. I will tell you, the people who represent these communities in Congress are focused on it. We brief them, we let them know, we hear from them about their concerns. And so it really is the best of government at work. And I think I'll end just with we have this new dynamic now where we do have a lot of mis and disinformation that is out there. And so one of the amazing things that FEMA does is they've got kind of a social listening capability where they are able to pick up these narratives and where we are able to kind of flood the environment and make sure that we are getting survivors the actual facts about what assistance mean, what comes with it, what it is and what it isn't. But this is something that we are increasingly dealing with that is bringing a different aspect to disasters. And I think that, we have to continue to encourage survivors to go to authoritative sources for their information, to go to government websites and to use government materials really to understand what it is that the federal government will do to assist you.
Caitlin Durkovich, Deputy Assistant to the President and Deputy Homeland Security Advisor for Resilience and Response at the White House National Security Council. Thank you so much for joining us here at the MeidasTouch Network. We appreciate your work, and thank you for watching. Make sure you hit subscribe on the YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time here on the MeidasTouch Network.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.